Hello everyone, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Arena video with another Brawl deck. So, the deck that we're looking at today is Blue-White Flyers in the Eyes of the Senate, with Dovin Barn as Grand Arbiter as our commander. So this is a deck that I feel is probably one of the weaker ones I've made, because it's trying to strike a middle ground between control elements and flyers. And I feel like it does all right as it is, but could do better focusing more heavily one way or the other. Since Dovin, as a commander, is a good option for flyers if you want the additional blue as opposed to just going mono white with Saphara. Since his -1 creates Thopters, the Thopters are flying, and his +1 then gives loyalty counters to Dovin for each creature that does combat damage to a player that turn. So if you flood the board with cheap flyers and just smack your opponent frequently, then Dovin's counters will keep going up. You'll be able to keep minusing to make more Thopters, or use his -7 to just look at the top 10 cards and choose 3 of them to go into your hand, which in a singleton format is a really good amount of filtering. So with that in mind, I did... that's sort of how I've ended up in this middle spot, because we do want a lot of cheap flyers in order to get the counters up there, but then we do want an equal amount of payoff cards to make the -7 worthwhile. So, starting off, we have a few cheap creatures. So, Spectral Sailor, Terramander, Healer's Hawk, and Fairy Guidemother are all pretty cheap 1/1s for 1. That all have flying, so we're able to start getting the early pressure there. Giant Killer doubles as removal, and is also able to remove creatures from combat by tapping them down, so we can still get a few additional hits in against big things, or just remove threats from attacking us back. In our 2-mana range, we don't have that many creatures. We have Fairy Vandal, Night Veil Sprite, and Hypnotic Sprite, all of which just allow us to apply a little bit extra pressure. We then have Dawn of Hope, since we have a lot of small amounts of life gain, so that the draw card clause will be triggered quite frequently. Dovin's -1 does it, and then I think we also have like Absorb, Ajani, and then some lifelink from things like Saphara. So there's enough reasons to have it in there, as well as being able to create tokens, which we've got a Divine Visitation in here, so we're able to then start pumping out Angels en masse for 4 mana if we ever get to the late game. Rally of Wings, it untaps all of our creatures and then gives the flying ones +2/+2. Can be useful for finishing off the opponent, or as a defensive maneuver to attack in and then surprise them when they think they've got safe blocks back. Tail's End is just essentially removal for a commander. Arcane Signet for some additional mana ramp. Stolen by the Fae, so we can return a creature with a CMC equal to X to an owner's hands, and we make that many 1/1 blue flying fairies. So it's not the most solid of removal, but if we ever get it with Divine Visitation, we're going to be producing a lot of angels with that. It's also able to produce some flyers for us, which then works well with Dovin, and so it's all in all a pretty decent card. Angel of Vitality, it starts the game as a 4/4 if we don't take any damage by the time it comes down, and then it also doubles the life gain we get, so we're more likely to stay above that 25. Hanged Executioner, it serves as removal, it creates a second body on entry, it's pretty decent value there. Brazen Borrower gives us the ability to remove a threat, and then also flash it in. It's got a very powerful body for punching, but does have the downside of not being able to be used defensively to block creatures on the ground. But that's not really a problem, because it's not particularly our game plan on the whole. Imperial Eagle, it buffs all of our creatures, and is probably the main reason why you'd want to play blue over mono white for flyers. Aerial Assault, it gains us more life, it destroys a tapped creature. There's better removal, but the fact that we get the additional life gain is another plus. Mace of the Valiant, because we're producing so many cheap tokens, Mace of the Valiant can get a lot of counters on it. Being able to give that to something so that it's got vigilance and power equal to the number of counters on it is a really good way of just punching through at the end, or having something that can be a real threat that opponents can't just safely attack through, since most of our creatures are pretty much on the small side. Unbreakable Formation, it gives a buff to our team if used defensively, gives us a nice healthy swing, can also be used defensively for just defensive purposes, and the Indestructible. Winged Words, card draw is nice, it's cheaper with flyers, so it's almost always 2 mana for us. Teferi, it's a good card in white-blue. Probably one of the more control-y elements of the deck. That could be changed out if we were to streamline it more one way or the other. However, it does give some additional card draw, can be useful with the bounce, and then giving instants and sorceries flash is a little bit nice. It lets us use the aerial assault during the opponent's turn. So I'm not actually sure if there's many other sorceries in here. I think there's a few, but yeah, there's 4 sorceries. Oh yeah, Stolen by the Fae is also a sorcery. That's another good one to use at instant speed. But overall, that alongside Absorb for another counter spell are just more of the control elements there. Moving into the 4 mana, Archon of Absolution. By taxing the opponent to attack us, it does slow down the assault a bit. If they want to tap out everything to play something big, then they're not going to be able to attack that turn. If they're paying to attack, then they're not playing as many big things. And the Pro White can sometimes be relevant, and can sometimes be a bit of a non-bow, because Mace of the Valiant is a card that exists, and is also white. So we can't equip Archon with it. God Eternal Kefnet. Whilst we don't have the most instants or sorceries, there's enough that it's still good to use, and the body as a 4/5, especially with the fact it comes back when it dies, is just really good for making it a recurring threat. Sphinx of Foresight. If it's in our opening hand, we get to scry 3 at the first upkeep, so we get to set up our draws for the next few turns, which is already a good start. A 4/4 body for 4 as a flyer is we're getting value for our mana, and then on our upkeep we get to scry 1, so we can improve the quality of our draws. Elite Guard Mage gains us more life, draws us another card. Smothering Tithe is another card that I think probably, once again with more control elements, we were having a lot more mana open during the opponent's turn, had a lot more things we could do at the late game. Might benefit from being cut out, but it slows the opponent if they don't want to give us additional mana. And if they're giving us additional mana, then we can hold up our counters a lot more easily anyway. Especially if we get down Leyline of Anticipation, which is another card that, once again, benefited from an earlier build a lot more than the last version I've got here, where it lets us play our control elements, but if they don't play into our control elements, we still get to out our creatures, so we can still apply our pressure as normal. Very good in the opening hand, because it comes out for free. Otherwise, it's a lot more questionable, and there aren't many turns where I go, yes, I'll take this turn to play Leyline of Anticipation, because that's the best thing to do. Fairy Formation is an upgraded version of Spectral Sailor with a card draw effect that also creates fairies, that once again, Divine Visitation loves. So, on top of that being a very decent body, it's a great finisher. It gives us recurring abilities to create more tokens, and it draws us cards. It gives us everything we want on a single unit. And then finally, Depose, Deploy, can tap down something and draw us a card, but most of the time we'll be using it for the Deploy for 2 more Thopters and life equal to the number of creatures we control, which should hopefully be a bit more wide than our opponent. We're not particularly going big outside of 1 or 2 creatures with the Mace and Saphara, but it still serves its purpose there. Warrant can buy us a turn by putting an attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library, which then can also screw over the opponent's draw somewhat. If we've got a counterspell, then we can take advantage of that with the Warrant into the counterspell when they play the thing again. Or we can just Warden and get another flyer out with Vigilance as a Sphinx. So lots of potential value there, and then Saphara, since it gives all of our other creatures indestructible, and it's a good body on top of that, and we can play it for cheap if we get enough small things down. So with regards to cards that I've considered, I'm not going to go into quite as much depth as I usually do, since I do feel that this deck's not quite where I want it to be, so I am going to definitely be making a more streamlined white-blue flyers down the line, as well as probably at some point a more hardline control Azorius deck, though that one is probably going to be using Teferi Time Raveler as the commander rather than Dovin. So I'm just going to go over a few cards that will consider the high end that probably wouldn't go into either of them, just because they're too slow for aggressive flyers and not quite control finisher enough for the control. Here's just a quick list of some of the cards that were considered at one point that probably, with a few exceptions, I think these two are just a bit too expensive for a more aggressive build that were originally in the more control element build, alongside some pretty bog standard removal as you'd expect: Prison Realms, the Divine Arrows, whatnot. So Vantress Gargoyle, with the slower elements of the deck, whilst it's a very good body for 2 mana, if you've not got the mill engine, then it's not going to do much in the early aggression. In the late game, because I don't have any real graveyard recursion of my own, milling myself hurts using his tap ability, and I've then got to wait quite late into the game for the opponent to have enough cards to have Vantress Gargoyle attack. I want to play out my hand, so the Gargoyle just doesn't quite cut it as a blocker either. So nice body, not quite good enough to work with the archetype without building more support around it. Mu Yanling is one that probably should be in here. The -3 allows you to create 4/4 elemental bird tokens, so even if we get down our Divine Visitation, they do then change into White Angels, but they do gain Vigilance, so we're not losing value on the body. We're gaining, it's just colour. So if they've got something with Pro White, then that's the one issue that could come from that. But it's still a good body. The +2 then hoses something, makes it lose flying, so we can then punch through easier. It gives -2/-0, so we reduce their aggression as well. And then if we get to the emblem, we then have islands to just tap and draw cards. So I do think it's probably one that should be in here, that I just blanked at some point. Yeah, so definitely one to consider. Warden of Evos Isle, it makes creatures with flying cheaper. Since we've got fewer flyers than I was anticipating and a lot more token generation with flying, it's got its uses, but I think with the token horde, we're not getting the reduction as much as we'd want, especially for a 3-mana play. Murmuring Mystic, there weren't quite enough instants and sorceries to justify it, since it does generate us a lot of tokens if we've got the more controlling build. The middle ground I ended up going for just isn't quite good enough to make the illusions to make up for it. Sphinx of New Prav is a good body. It costs more to target. It's got flying and vigilance, so it's an aggressive attacker and defender, but it does normally die on defense, so we're normally only going to get 1 or 2 swings in if we're then deciding to block. And the double white, double blue can sometimes hurt because of the singleton land base. So I think I just went for, especially when at the 4-mana range we've also got things like Ketna as a 4/5 and the Sphinx of Foresight, which is a 4/4. We do have a bit more utility at the 4-mana range, so it wasn't quite necessary there. Angel of Grace, it's got flash, so naturally it can come in during the opponent's turn as well and surprise them with a good body. It can get a favourable trade because of that, and then it also is able to stop us from losing the game and give us 1 more turn to win, essentially. So it's definitely got value there, but yeah, so worth consideration, and I think it's just that sort of the middle ground syndrome of this deck. A lot of these cards are justifiable one way or the other. It's just I've gone for somewhere in the middle and have cut the high end to accommodate the low end, so who knows whether or not. Harmonious Archon, most of our creatures are smaller than 3/3. However, a good number of them are also bigger, so it's sort of a middle ground option again. And because it also buffs the opponent's creatures, then they can get in a lot more damage as well. So while Stars is unblocked, they're then going to be able to counter-attack. So it's a mixed bag on how effective it'll be. Herald of the Sun gives us a nice ability to just keep buffing up our flyers, but at 6 mana, it's kind of expensive, and if it dies immediately, then it's a sad day. Attempsis. It's a decent body, although we do also get that body on Kefnet, and it does give us a means of drawing cards and a very fun way of winning the game if we're able to pull that off. But we've got enough cards to pull it off with different mana costs, but it's going to be really tricky to do so. So it's not really worth trying for that. And I did feel that with the more aggressive slant from going wide, Attempsis wasn't necessarily a necessary addition there. Dream Eater is another flash creature, so can work well with the control elements and being able to bounce something on entry and Surveil 4, sets up our following draws. Yeah, so it's a good option for the more controlling element. Azorius Skyguard, -1/-0 to opponent's creatures can be pretty decent at times, but the body doesn't quite line up with that effect. So it dies pretty easily to a lot of removal, and then it feels bad pumping 6 mana into this to then get no effect out of it effectively. And Finale of Glory, which I may actually reconsider putting in, since even though the soldiers don't have flying, unless we have down the Divine Visitation again, because of the fact that we still have the treasure generation from the Smothering Tithe, we do get a lot of excess mana. And since we then have 2 cards that effectively work really well with Finale of Glory, as well as serving a decent defensive body earlier on by creating a few soldiers, as well as potentially getting a copy of it with Kefnet, there could be an argument for sticking it in as a big finisher. So it's worth a consideration. But I think I initially just blanked over it because I was never expecting to get over X mana, at which point I don't get the angels, I don't get flyers, so what's the point at that point? So that pretty much covers everything that I was going to talk about there. As I said, we'll probably do additional builds for this because Azorius is my favourite colour combination, or at least 2 colour combination, so I do hope to do more with it in what we've got available to us. However, with that being said, let's get into some games. So, I'm recording this game immediately after playing. This is not the opening hand that I want. Yeah, just finished this one after playing a master plan, so it's kind of fitting that I'm immediately against Nicol Bolas Dragon Guard. I did also forget to reboot my computer, so yay. Oh, that's a ley line. That's a ley line in my opening hand. Yes. I feel good about that against Nicol Bolas. So. Don't have a plains for the Castle Ardenvale though, unfortunately. Alright, so. I really should have restarted before I did this. Yeah, I'll do it now. Oh well. Ah, Fires of Invention. Great. I hate it. They can pay for Smothering Tithe all they want to. Honestly, I'm fine with that. That's the wrong target for this deck, realistically. Okay. I think Mace of the Valiant. End of turn. Mace of Valiant now. I'm not in a good spot.
Will resonate.
Yeah.
I have other plans. My intellect is without limit.
You're not. I stand on the shoulders of giants.
That almost hurt.
Yeah, I'm just gonna duck out of this one casually. I mean, if the lag wasn't bad enough as it was, I'm not coming back from this. Well, I wonder if I'm playing against hand destruction. That is another low line of anticipation. Sure. Why not? Yep, not surprised at the turn 1 duress. Start with this. Got my 4th land for this Smothering Tithe if I get to do that point. Ooh. Yeah, I'll drop the land anyway. Okay. Double blue. I can now flash the Hypnotic Sprite in, or I can counterspell next turn, which I'm probably going to save for their Davriel. I have double blue. I will drop the island here. Just want to make sure that I've definitely got some stuff down. There's my 4th land. But that one does enter tapped. Go on, go for Davriel. Nope. And I could still play it again next turn. So I drop this.
I will gladly. This is just a small example of my genius.
I'm not actually sure I need Smothering Tithe in this deck anymore. Yeah, Priest isn't too much of a bother to me. The fact that they didn't get Davriel is good.
My inventions bring joy to me and others.
Okay. Ah! Interesting. That's... Yeah, that's certainly removal. Go for Davriel again.
I'll have to order 20.
This got this.
Your mind.
Perfect.
A solid hit.
Struggling?
Good.
Right, so minus two then.
I can benefit from another's success.
Drop this. So then I can do this. still have the mana for Hypnotic Strike. Oh, I still had the mana for Hypnotic Strike anyway because I got the treasure. Yeah, Smothering Tide. Smothering Tide, I think, is one of those cards that I completely missed, and oh, that's a little bit more scary. I've got no cards in hand.
Perish the thought.
Yep, oops indeed. Works for me.
All I've left you is pain.
That's good. So let's Plesto then.
There is elegance in simplicity.
Okay. Think this actually makes this better for me because yeah, you go and punch that over now, and suddenly Sphinx. So you block and sacrifice it. However, you only get the one food. Do I plus and punch? Yeah, I think I do.
I constantly seek to innovate.
Oh, yeah. For some reason, the Menace doesn't let you do that. Now, yes, I do lose my Sphinx. However, that is just what I need.
There is elegance in simplicity.
Gain some life. I presumably get another treasure. Oh no, they're paying. Okay. There's no point doing this now, I guess.
Nobody's perfect, even me.
That's good.
I hope you don't mind if I enjoy this.
Oh well. I'll do this now then. Switch to the attack. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Not just a gadget, but ingenuity.
There we go. Finally got something good enough to get them to concede. So I guess there was a use to the treasures, is I could start burning them for that. Ooh. Alright. It's not the most action-packed hand, but I guess it's a keeper. I have 4 lands. I have Kefnet at the 4 mana spot, a Mace of the Valiant. I guess that should have been turn 2. Could have got the extra 1 damage from the Terramander. Oh well. Here's hoping we draw a 1 mana. Oh, that's another land. That's not really what I need. I think I'll drop the Mace on turn 3. Start getting that pumped up. Tome of Legends, good card. Yeah, it definitely seems like a turn 3 Mace to me. Since turn 4 I can Dove in -1 and Healer's Hawk. Or just Kefnet. Kefnet's probably better. We'll see what the opponent does. Midnight Reaper. Okay, I'll drop Kefnet. So they could have plenty of removal. Kefnet is good at eating it though, and then still coming back. Taser, Midnight Reaper just draws them 2 cards. They're just drawing a card. Oh, they're missing their land, I'm presuming. That said, all they could have been deciding on what to do first. They should probably kill Kefnet. Yep. Understandable. Go in there. Okay. Archon Healer's Hawk. Oh, wrong thing. Taser. No blocks. Dovin Plus gets him +4, so he'd be able to ult next time if he didn't take a hit. He'll take 5 on swings from them. So I think... pro white. Healer's Hawk. You have life, mate. That at least mitigates some of the damage that's being dealt, and it also gives vigilance, so you're a good blocker. I have absorb up for any shenanigans. Oh, I should have attacked with the Archon still. Oh well. Let that resolve. That doesn't lose them life, doesn't gain them life. I think I can gain more life than they can make me lose it. Get this back. I then don't have a counterspell up. Do this.
I benefit from another's success.
So now you can still kill. Taser. And then we should have lethal on the next turn. I think we got this one. It's a pretty promising board state. I mean, I guess they could have a board wipe and duress. That would do it. Yeah, you're tapping out for that. Good game. Easy peasy. Let's get one more game in with this one. I was a bit worried with it. This is one that really has been underperforming for me. Yeah, that seems decent enough. It's been underperforming for me for the most part, so I've not been all that happy with it. But it's at least been doing serviceably in this game. I think there's definitely a lot more changes I can do. I think I had too many control elements early on that got cut, and then when I increased the number of cheap flyers to take advantage of Dovin, I've not actually then cut for space, essentially, so could definitely be some improvements on how I use my mana, my card selection. Like, as fun as Leyline of Anticipation was in those two games, yeah, it's a good card if it's in your opening hand, but it's not doing as much in this deck as it could be. That said, maybe I just got in some really bad luck with my previous games. I do believe I put in an additional land since last time, so... Alright. So, do I think I go them first. Start going a little bit wider before I drop the eagle. Maybe I can put something in to take advantage of the Smothering Tithe that cares about artifacts, since these Thopters are also artifacts. So maybe the all that glitters. Time Raveler. Ooh,
that got my blood pumping.
Could have Questing Beast next turn. So, with that in mind, I think I keep my Giant Killer up. Yeah, I'll keep it up. And then if nothing happens, I draw with Spectral Sailor. Only the one black, so that's a plus at least. Next turn, though, they get access to 6 green mana for creatures. Come on, Questing Beast. It's what I'm expecting. I'm anticipating it. Oh, Hydra. Yeah, that's it's less good, and also allows me to do this instead. If they don't double counters. Go on, fight this Spectral Sailor. Ah, they're doubling. Wait, if they double, I can still kill with Giant Killer. Do I draw? Oh, that's the question. I think I still draw, and then post deploy. Brazen Borrower, I can bounce it back. Time Raveler can bounce it back. They can then play a bigger Hydra.
There is elegance in simplicity.
I think I Brazen Borrow it. Since I can then flash in the Brazen Borrower. I do like the middle ground this strikes, though. As much as it would probably be better just going full-on aggression with cheap flyers, I do think that with the extra blue, having that more mid-rangey, control-ish element does add a lot of fun to it. That is a problem. I can't immediately deal with that. So next turn I can kill it. Okay, 6 mana, 2 white. I think here's what I do. Time Raveler.
Unknown, but excellent.
Bounce this token.
Might be a bad idea.
Unbreakable formation, you say? Huh. Oh, I forgot to flash in the Brazen Borrower end of turn. Oops.
Not just a gadget, but ingenuity.
Gonna hold off on the Unbreakable for now. Although its time will come soon. So I'm hoping they punch Teferi with the ooze. Because yeah, if I drew that and had that, I'd have used that first, swung in, and then I'd have the Rally of Wings, which would make mine big enough to kill their oozes. Okay, so they can destroy an artifact and a creature. They get rid of 2 of those that way. Can't do much about the Planeswalker. Is this an Unbreakable moment? Or Brazen Borrower, I think. Casualties of War is great, by the way. I love it.
The shortcomings here were mine.
Shame I don't get to use Dovin, but it's not the worst. We do now get to punch. Fairy. So that was a good turn for them. I'm going to give them a turn with use. Drop the tithe. Start taxing them. Thank you. Now all I need them to do is draw a card. I mean, I guess I can depose. Or Rally of Wings. Ooh. That's... There goes my Smothering Tithe. Land. This could run away with me. Maybe I should have gone for the Unbreakable. Yeah, that's probably the correct decision. I do have my 1 extra mana there. At least. Let's take it. I think I can afford to take it for now. Okay, so Pyrean Eagle. I have an Unbreakable formation up. I have a Rally of Wings. I have a Giant Killer. I think I can win this. They do have an extra 3 life there with food, but then I've got the Rally of Wings. So I'm hoping they Garruk and try and kill something. At least the plus side is they've got very few flyers, so they're not able to block anything. They have to be able to kill things. They need to get rid of 2 things. Well, only 1 thing, but they have to have 2 kill spells. Okay, they're going for a big Hydra. Don't think that's the right target. But okay. It did leave up 3 mana though, so they may still have another way of killing something. Hopefully it's another damage related one so that Rally of Wings is able to finish this off. They might just be keeping the mana up for food. Which I am A-okay with. Only downside is I do only have the 1 white mana, so I can't absorb and Rally of Wings. So what do you have for me? Is it just your food? If you don't eat your food, you're dead. Whew. Good game. Managed to come back from the casualties of war. Glad I didn't use the unbreakable formation as early as I thought I would.